Aloha, it's Dave Lawrence. How are you? I hope you're doing good, and I appreciate you taking time to check this out and to join us for this thing. We got a talented keyboardist, vocalist, songwriter, and performer who you know from his place in Bonnie Raitt's band for sure. His latest CD features her. A cappella, it's called, with an O. Also includes Dr. Jon. My guest is a New Orleans musician. In addition to being well known for working in Bonnie Raitt's group, he's recorded, performed, and or worked with music legends from Taj Mahal to B.B. King. He's also an expat coming from Britain and obviously falling in love with portions of American culture. His resume includes a lot of impressive folks, and his all-star group that he's bringing to Hawaii possibly just as impressive, if not more so. Bass monster Reggie McBride, whose own background is stunning, and we'll talk about that ahead. Steve Ferrone on drums from Tom Petty's band, and a lot of different projects. These guys are superstars he's bringing. Too many folks to name, but we'll get into both of their backgrounds. It's a group of savages who hit Maui at Charlie's in Paia October 25th, and then the big Hullabaloo Music and Arts Festival in Honolulu October 27th. It's free. It's outdoors. Beautiful downtown Honolulu. What could be wrong with that? Let's hear more about the show as we welcome our buddy who has his absolute monster gentleman band and many great stories to tell, the great Jon Cleary. Aloha and mahalo, Brother Jon. Thank you for doing this, dude.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
Yeah, well, no, the pleasure is mine. And so before we get into your current visit, take me back to where your Hawaii history begins. When did you first start coming to the islands, or when did it pop into your life? Let's go way back there.
Well, I can't remember what year it was. The first time I went to Hawaii was with Bonnie Raitt. It was shortly after I joined Bonnie Raitt's band. So that's probably 12 years ago, something like that, 13 years ago perhaps. And I've been there a couple of times since, with Bonnie. And I fell in love with Hawaii. It's absolutely beautiful. It's got the same kind of light, laid-back atmosphere that southwest Louisiana does, even though we're sort of about as far as you can get from each other, with staying within the United States. But this a similar kind of lazy, relaxed vibe. It belongs to a different world.
It's a comparison I've never heard before, but the way you're describing it, I can sort of see how that would be. And do you live in New Orleans or outside of the city?
No, I'm in the heart of New Orleans, in the old town. Where I'm sitting right now is about 200 yards from the Mississippi River, in an old neighborhood called Bywater, in the 9th Ward of New Orleans.
When the big thing happened, when Katrina rolled through, where were you during that?
Well, fortunately for me, I was out of town. I was in California doing some stuff with Bonnie, and was due to fly home that weekend. And a friend called me and said, you might want to turn on the Weather Channel. And I saw the hurricane the size of Texas heading for New Orleans, and oh my God. So, so I was out of town when it happened, thank goodness.
So you were lucky that you didn't have to deal with that stuff head on. Now, where was your residence? You own a place there. Was it damaged at all during that?
Yeah, we had a lot of damage. We had a couple of feet of water, and I just moved into the house, so a lot of my personal effects were in boxes on the floor, so that all just got completely toasted. So 30 years worth of New Orleans photographs gone in an instant, and records and song lyrics and music charts and stuff, and several instruments. But there are a lot of people who really fared much more dramatically than me. So people in New Orleans don't really complain, because you never know if the person standing next to you lost everything.
Right.
So no, I escaped pretty lightly, comparatively speaking.
Right. I can understand that. A lot of humility to go around in an experience like that. What was it about New Orleans culture that just appealed to you that so much that you would make it such a big part of your life?
Several things. I mean, obviously, mainly the music. But coming from a quiet sort of medieval village in the countryside of England, New Orleans sounded so exotic. Tales of pirates and slavery days and jazz music, the Spanish, the French, the Africans, proximity to the Caribbean, jungles, alligators, swamps, Cajuns, spicy food, gumbo, jambalaya, Professor Longhair, Dr. John, Buddy Bolden, Louis Armstrong. I mean, you just go on for hours just listing all the things associated with New Orleans that make it appealing. So it was the whole package, really. And I had family members who had lived here at one time or another, so I grew up with stories about New Orleans.
All right, so you had the folklore, if you will, was enticing enough to make you want to visit. And then, do you still remember your very first time actually going there?
Oh, very vividly, like it was yesterday, yeah. Yeah, I took a taxi I flew straight to New Orleans. Took a taxi from the airport to a bar called the Maple Leaf, which then became my living room, essentially, for the next couple of years. It was full of great music and great people, and for a 17-year-old, just fresh away from home without any parental supervision, it was a wild town. It was great. I absolutely loved it, and still do.
How did you get your talents plugged in initially there?
Well, I'm quite, I'm very respectful of the tradition. And so I did for the first 2 years, basically, I was just a sponge, soaking it all up. I mean, I've been playing since I was a kid, so I've already been playing for years and years, but I wanted to be, when I started playing with these guys, I wanted to be ready. So I spent the first 2 years really just listening to as much music as I could, and then just picking up odd little gigs here and there. But I was a guitar player when I went to New Orleans, and then I fast became a piano player, because there was more piano music from New Orleans, and there were fewer people doing it. But it was a gradual, very, very natural pace of picking up the music here.
When did Bonnie emerge into your life?
I would have been in the late 90s. I was touring with Taj Mahal. I was in Taj's band, and Bonnie came and guested on a record we were doing. And we hit it off, and she was putting a new band together and asked me if I'd join. And I said, yeah. So it was a thrill to be playing with Bonnie, especially after Taj. They're two of my childhood heroes, really.
Taj was one of your childhood heroes, so those were records that you had been exposed to, I'm assuming, by older relatives?
Yes, exactly, yeah. No, I had a bunch of Taj Mahal records, Dr. John, Bonnie Raitt, Ry Cooder, that whole generation of American musicians that had learnt firsthand from the old cats, like Muddy Waters and Professor Longhair, Sleepy John Estes. So to actually, I grew up hearing those records, and then to be actually playing with them was a real thrill, and still is. I just finished a 3-month tour with Dr. John, who was another one of the guys that was a big influence on me as a kid, learning to play.
That was a guy I was going to ask about, because he's both someone that is on your most recent project, but he's also someone who you said is an influence. When you first got to New Orleans, how long did it take before you ran across him and were able to communicate with him?
Well, he wasn't living in New Orleans when I came here. He hadn't been living in New Orleans since the 1960s. Our paths first crossed actually in London, because after a couple of years of being in New Orleans, I went back to London briefly, and Dr. John cropped up in London doing some gigs, and I got hired to play guitar. So we became friends, and I played guitar, and then we'd switch, and he'd play some guitar, and I'd play some piano. And so over the years, we've been friends, and fairly recently he asked me to come out and play on tour with him to promote his new record, and also to help promote my new record that he plays on. Doing some extra keyboard duties and some guitar playing, so that was a thrill.
Oh, it's a huge...
He's a big, big influence on what I do.
He's a monster, dude. I've seen him, hung out with him, loved his music. Totally makes sense that he would be at the core of some of your New Orleans love. I'm wondering where the Meters factor in.
Well, the Meters... I had Meters records as a kid in England. When I came to New Orleans, the Meters weren't playing as such. There was a lineup they put together every once in a while, and they would sound check and rehearse across the street from the bar where I worked. So I'd hear them playing pretty frequently. And then when I got to start putting my own bands together in New Orleans, George Porter became a friend, and I would hire George Porter to come play with me. And then I'd done play gigs with Zigaboo and some gigs with Leo. And a couple of times when Art Neville couldn't make Meters gigs, where I subbed and played with the Meters. So just a great, and if you like New Orleans funk, doesn't get funkier than the Meters.
No, it doesn't, my brother. The thing that leads to new gigs for you, Jon, is it your ability to get along personally with people? Does that almost in some ways, not that the musical skill is not really important, but does it end up being more important in some ways or more critical to have like a good rapport and have hit it off when you first get to know these people?
Well, all of the above, really. I mean, if you're going to join somebody's band and you're going to be spending a lot of time with them, and they're looking to hire somebody, they're going to be reluctant to hire somebody they don't like. That hazard that guess. So, but generally speaking, musicians all get on pretty well with one another. And if your tastes lie in the same direction, then you always have a lot of things in common. I think that's why Bonnie and I hit it off so well. We love the same music. And she really loves New Orleans stuff, especially New Orleans piano style. And no, she's like my big sister. I love Bonnie. She's we're kind of family now. So I toured with her pretty much non-stop for 10 years. And as a group, you become a family. Basically, live in a bus together and spend a great deal of time with each other. So it's certainly important that you get on. I think it's essential that you play. That your compatibility is personal and professional too. You got to be able to play the stuff right.
Yeah, sure. But sometimes I wonder, because you've met so many of these different dudes, and Taj Mahal included. I mean, a lot of different kinds of cats, different sorts of bands, and you just plug yourself in. And another reason I guess I mentioned that is that a couple times in particular that I've seen Bonnie here, obviously you were in the band. It was 04 and 07, I believe. I think January both times. And the way she talks about you on stage, you call her your big sister. That's no surprise because she's so loving to you. It must feel good.
Oh, it's great. It's great. And I've been lucky. But for me, primarily, I mean, in the music business, I tend to lean towards the music side rather than the business side. And I've been lucky as a side man. All the bands I've played in have been with really great music. The onus is on the music. I don't take gigs where I don't like the music, and so that's the bond that we all have is just a passion and enthusiasm for the same hobby, which is just great funky music. So that's the common denominator that makes everything else fall into place.
Is that, talk about, I guess, the connection when I think of these cats that you're coming with, that makes a lot of sense in how you connect with them. Where did these dudes arrive in your life and this become a project, the thing that you got with Reggie and Steve?
Well, Reggie and I have worked on a bunch of projects together. We've made records together and toured together. He's a phenomenal bass player. He was in Stevie Wonder's band for a while. Just a great session musician. Steve Ferrone, this is going to be the first time I've met Steve.
Wow.
I know of him by rep. Well, actually, that's not true. I did meet him once before briefly, but it'll be the first time we've played together. And Joe Caro, too, the guitar player. But there's a certain level of proficiency with session musicians that allows you to converse in the same language such that you can sit down and play and instantly forge a rapport. I mean, that's the difference between a lot of musicians and those who have the skills to work on sessions, because you have to have a wide musical vocabulary and an ability to adapt, and an ability or a breadth of knowledge that allows you to guess what's coming up next. It's almost like four guys playing a game of chess. And you're always thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead, and because a lot of what we do is improvisation. So when we come together, we'll rehearse, and there's a framework for each song, a beginning and ending, little details that happen. But then within that framework, there's a great deal of leeway for everybody to improvise and bring their own personality. That's what keeps it fresh. So I'm really, really excited to be playing with all these guys. That's a world-class rhythm section.
Oh, it's crazy. So why, so you've never jammed together. What brought them together for you for this one gig? Was it you were just coming through with Reggie? I mean, how is it that this is happening?
No, I actually am going off to Australia to do a tour. I'm using an Australian rhythm section when I get there. And then the phone rang to see if I wanted to play in Hawaii. And they mentioned the rhythm section that they had available. And it sounded like a dream come true. So I'm breaking my journey on the way to Australia and playing with a great rhythm section and enjoying the delights of Hawaii. So it's all worked out really well.
And they're going to do the gig on Maui too.
Yes, they are.
In terms of the set list that you cats are going to deliver, what can folks expect with the tunes?
Well, it's going to be a variety of stuff. It's going to be a combination of songs that I've written, some one or two New Orleans tunes that people are perhaps familiar with, certainly New Orleans aficionados anyway, and then certainly some tunes that people aren't familiar with. And it's going to cover a wide historical panorama. So we'll be playing, for example, a 100-year-old funk tune from New Orleans, written by Jelly Roll Morton, who grew up a few blocks from where I'm speaking to you from. And then right up to some of my songs, which are funky and more soul music. And then a couple of Professor Longhair tunes to give people a little taste of what Carnival sounds like. And we'll be playing some new songs, old songs from the new album, A Cappella, which is a collection of songs by Alan Toussaint. So it'll be a wide spectrum of music, but with the New Orleans piano pretty much center stage.
When you get to knowing that we both obviously love funk a whole lot, and from different perspectives, you can play it. I just listen to it. But Reggie, his background, not just funk, but some of my all-time heroes, like I mean, to me, Aretha, Stevie Wonder. Didn't he do some stuff with James Brown, too?
He's played with everybody.
Do you sit and milk him for stories? Like, if I was with that cat on the road, I'd be like, Reggie, tell me about the things with Aretha. Let's get into some of that. I would just be milking the cat hard. Does that happen with you? Or?
I always try and get as many stories as I possibly can. The last 3 months out with Dr. John, I think I got to the point where I was boring him to tears with requests about obscure musicians that he would have known. I think he quite enjoyed it, actually, because I'm a bit of a funk detective in my spare time. I love finding out, especially when there's an opportunity to learn firsthand about old New Orleans musicians from back in the day.
Yeah, man. I mean, I love finding little weird gems like that, too. We obviously share that totally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can hear that. And I can appreciate, that discovery of funk. It's something really heavy, and you obviously love it, so that's cool that you do that with these cats. When this thing is done and you head back out, are you going to be continuing to sort of, not only with Bonnie, but is like Taj a cat that you'll get back into, or Dr. John? I mean, it seems like you just have the kind of rapport that you can fall back in with some of your past characters pretty easily.
Yes, I mean, things always crop up. I did a couple of shows with Taj in August. There's some talk about doing some more stuff later on. There's not enough time and not enough hours in the day for me to get to do all the stuff that I'd love to do. I mean, my primary focus is doing my gigs. And that was the reason I had to leave Bonnie's band, was because I was getting too many offers for my band to travel, and there were schedule conflicts, But I'm lucky to have a sort of very balanced diet. I get to play with great musicians. I mean, as a kid growing up here in New Orleans, I got to play with the legends that invented New Orleans R&B. Sadly, most of them are dead and gone now, but I was
like who?
To play with Snooks Eaglin, Tommy Ridgely, Earl King, Annie Cabo, Jesse Hill. I mean, it's like the history book characters from 1950s New Orleans rock and roll music. So I've been very lucky to play with all these people. Ultimately, my main thing is doing my own stuff. I write songs and like to play my own tunes, and have two bands here in New Orleans that I tour with. I just came back 2 days ago from a European tour with my trio, which was good.
That's the Absolute Gentlemen?
That's the Filthy Few.
Okay.
Which is actually a name that covers a multitude of sins, because there's so many great rhythm sections in New Orleans that I choose a different rhythm section every time I go out. It's great horn players, great bass players and drummers here. And then I have another band, a quartet called the Absolute Monster Gentlemen, which is a more fixed cast of characters. Great musicians with backgrounds in the black gospel tradition here. They're all great gospel singers, and that's a soul band and a funk band. So I'm very lucky, but I wish there was more time to do more of everything, really.
So you don't tour with Bonnie anymore because of this?
No, I don't. She has quite a heavy touring schedule, and I was getting a busier and busier schedule myself, so I just couldn't do both things. So having played with her for 10 years, it was time to concentrate on my gigs.
What are you most proud of in your career of work with her? In the body of work that you've done, the gigs that you've done, there must have been a gazillion. I've seen you so many different times with her. What sticks out in your mind? Maybe a historic venue, maybe because of guests that were there, maybe it was an important gig for other reasons.
Well, playing with Stevie Wonder was fun. We got to play I Wish with Stevie Wonder, which was pretty slamming. Really, it's just certain moments on odd gigs over the course of 10 years. All the gigs were good. All the gigs have to be good. There were certain highlights that just little magic moments, many of them scattered over the course of 10 years in various different places. Not nights where I could quote you the day of the week and the venue we were playing in,
sure,
the state we were in, but just a sort of a melange of just good time memories.
Well, I really appreciate the times I got to see you with her. I'm looking forward to these shows. Maybe when you're in Honolulu, we'd be able to stop down and say hi to you before the show or something.
Yeah.
I'd really love to say hi, and if you got time, maybe we'll record a little thing for the radio station.
I'd be delighted to.
It was a lot of fun talking to you. You're a really interesting
Beautiful
cat.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you very much for doing it. Appreciate it. Look forward to meeting you.
Be safe, Jon.
Bye-bye.
Aloha.